Hey everybody, before we start the show, I just wanted to let you know that this episode of Tabletop Babble is brought to you by D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond, you may know them as the digital tool set for Dungeons and Dragons, but they are so much more than a character builder and a way to read the rule books. Everything is organized, searchable, and awesome. If you are a designer like myself or my guest Mike Myler on this podcast, you are going to want D&D Beyond because it makes your life so much easier when you are designing. I seriously don't know how I did it with a lot of books in my lap, on my desk, on my chair, everywhere before this. It just makes your life a lot easier to have the ability to go in, to search, and make it happen. Best part is they're always having sales. They're always up to date. Plus, they put out tons of free content, articles from James Hake, videos from Todd Kenrick. So go check it out, dndbeyond.com. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, my guest is the many-time guest, Mike Myler. He is awesome, a great game designer, and the editor of EN5ider magazine. EN5ider has a special place in my heart, and we will talk about why in the interview right now. All right, everybody, now I am here with one of my favorite designers, one of my favorite people in the industry, Mike Myler. Welcome back to Tabletop Babble. How are you, man?
Well, my spirits are lifted to hear that I am one of your favorite people in the industry, man. I'm doing great.
It's awesome. Awesome to have you here. For people who don't know, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Oh, golly. Okay, so I've been full-time freelance game designing for half a decade now, which is terrifying.
Ooh, yeah. And you're alive.
I know. And there's a roof over my head, and I'm not starving. It's crazy. Yeah, so let's see. I have my own worlds. We're not here to talk about that today. They're awesome, though. MikeMyler.com. Check them out. More importantly, I am the editor for EN5ider, which is one of the longest-running D&D Patreons. You've written for it. James Hake used to be the editor before I took over. A lot of people are in there. It's great. If you would like to write there, please contact me. I do I do pitch calls every couple months, and it's a great place to work. You get 3 cents a word, and after a year, you get the rights back, so you can do whatever you want with it. Yeah, that's who I am.
That is huge too. The fact that rights revert back to the author is incredible.
Unheard of and so sweet.
Yeah, it's great. So that's what we're here to talk about today is EN5ider. And like you said, I've worked on it. I have a special place in my heart for EN5ider because it was the first published work that I ever had that I was paid for, which was really awesome. And I've written a couple of different articles for it that I just love. Artists are always brought in. The editing is top notch. The design is top notch. And I'm a big fan too of what else has been written in it. So, I'm also a member. It's one of those. Talk to me a little bit about EN5ider. What is it exactly that people get when they sign up?
All right, so it's sort of like it's a Patreon, which is very much like a periodical.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike a regular periodical, you decide how much you want to pay per article that you get. Every month we release 5 articles. Most people pay $1, and some of them are in the Playtesters Club. They pay $5 an article. They get early access to some things. And then once a month you get charged that fee per every article. Like I said, 5 articles a month. Most people it's $5. And as soon as you join, you become a member, and that gives you access to our archive of 265 plus articles, which is insane. It's literally thousands of pages. I had to collate it all the other day because I'm gradually putting them up on Drive Thru RPG. Yeah, it's a 8-page document of just one long bullet list of 260 things. And it took me like 3 hours to download them all. I'm going to work out a way where we zip them and stuff because it's just too much for new members. But it's great. And there's a ton of stuff on there. You can now you do have to pay for stuff you don't want. So like if you're not into right now we're doing an adventure series called Zeitgeist, which is acclaimed. It was written largely by Ryan Knock and Thirsty. But yeah, a lot of people aren't into it because it's steampunky and there's a little bit of futurism involved. So like here and there, you'd probably be able to take some monsters or a dungeon or something. But for the most part, I think maybe 50% of the members aren't actively playing through Zeitgeist. But, you know, it's $1 versus what you might pay in the stores and stuff. It's still a really good deal, even if you're not into that. Because the other 4 articles a month now, one's a mini adventure, and then depending on what one month, I think this month it's an intriguing organization, which is like a collection of NPCs that you can fit into your campaign for whatever reason. This one's called the Stone Path. They're these time traveling cult who petrifies you, and then like you pay a certain amount, and 100 years later they're unpetrify you.
Wow, that's awesome.
I know. That's actually one of the things I really love about being the editor, because you come into so many different ideas from so many people. Like, I had to go through 150 pitches this last time, I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah, it took me a couple of days. And I had to go back and like rescore some of them, because it was like, oh god, well, this is really good. I need, I can only take so many. I have to make a cut somewhere. So the Intriguing Organization, that's one of them. Then we started doing mini adventures. So this one is like a quick, like, you get into some thievery intrigue with an enchantress. The Herbalist Knapsack, which is some like lighter magic items, and then a magic item degradation system, which is kind of my thing. I have a war against magic items because I'm too generous with my players, and I'm like, okay, well, this was a powerful NPC. I guess they might have a magic item. Let's roll randomly, see what they got. Oh, Jesus, here's a thing that I'm going to regret giving you. So since I became the editor, we started Enchanted Trinkets, which is like cheap magic items that are mostly like flavor. So like a little dagger that like perfectly toasts bread as you cut through it, right? And you can stab something to deal 1 fire damage with it. Or if you just don't care and you really want to get rid of it, or you need it to do like more, you can break it and it'll deal like regular dagger damage plus a D4 fire, but then it's not magical anymore. You can't use it to do anything. And that costs, I think, like 85 gold. That's a good example of the kind of things you find with Enchanted Trinkets.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah. And so this other one, Magic Item Degradation System, because I try to do one like rule appendage per month, is by Eric Evgen, and it's a way to well, on the one hand, if bad things happen and you roll really poorly, your items can start to break on you, your weapons. On the other hand, if you want to be like an action movie fighter and just like break your swords on people, that is also an option, and good things can happen depending on what you're wielding and stab into somebody and break off. Try to keep it lively with a lot of variety every month,
Well, and that's one of the things that I love about it is it fills in a lot of gaps, and it's also not afraid to get weird in a great way. Like I know when stuff comes out from EN5ider that looks different, right? That looks like, oh man, this is crazy. That it's going to be good. That it's going to be thoughtful and well edited, and that you're picking stuff that makes a lot of sense. Like you said, Zeitgeist, right, is a little steampunky. It's maybe not something we're used to seeing from your traditional like sword and sorcery kind of fantasy. Oh, but it is a good adventure path. I encourage people, even if steampunk isn't your thing, to check it out because there's some really cool stuff and cool ideas going in there. So what sort of things do you look for? How do you get that balance of like, this will probably appeal to everybody, and this is weird and cool, so we'll do that?
So when I go to do the pitch call, I'll tell people, this is what I want to see, this is what I don't want to see. And most of the time, I try not to tell them what to do genre-wise. I'm like, for the first wave, it was like classes, right? And actually, one of the things that killed me when we did the original classes was that we only had 3,000 words a piece as like writers, which is not enough. It's not enough. If you like look in the DMG or the player's handbook, I think I sat there and I counted them out by hand. It was like 4,000 on the low end. So like the very most basic fighter and most basic rogue were 4,000 words a piece. So to fix that, I broke them into 2 different articles, and it was like that dominated us for a while. This last one, I think I was asking for, oh golly, it was I wanted to have standard fantasy because I wanted to get back towards some more. So this was the Intriguing Organizations one. That's right, yeah. So the Intriguing Organizations that I mentioned earlier, that's a new article series that I just got picked up. The first one of them was actually super weird. Did you read the Esoterics one?
Oh no, I haven't yet. Talk to me about that.
Oh, they're so cool. Okay, so they're like super mathematicians. Not super magicians, super mathematicians. So like they I think one of the items in there is like a ship that just like moves on its own. But there's no magic involved. It's just so sublimely crafted that as long as it's uninjured, doesn't need sails, it'll just go right through the water. And it's filled with like weird stuff like that. And I thought that was an amazing thing to include because like immediately you're going to think, oh, freaking wizards. right? Yeah, no, it's way more than that. And then the one after that was like a barbarian tribe that's all about like destroying fiends. So we covered the full spectrum from the beginning to the bottom. Now it's kind of filling in the middle.
Well, and that's the thing is, I love that you're coming to this as a writer first who wrote for EN5ider, and now you're the editor. Like, you have a great idea of what can fit in and what needed to change to be able to fit things like classes and stuff like that in there. Do you have any particular favorite articles that you want to call out while we're talking about it here?
Okay, so the card caster is awesome. There's a problem with it though. So conceptually, it's brilliant. It's like an incredibly sumptuous meal that I want you to come and have in my totally uncomfortable dining room, right? So like once you understand what's going on, you're like, oh my god. But there's a barrier there. We're fixing that. That'll be fixed soon, but not yet. A lot of the classes that we did recently were good. I think I like the Bloodweaver an awful lot.
Nice. What's the Bloodweaver all about for our audience?
Blood magic. More intense than just like a tradition of blood magic spells, which I've done in other books. It's a class that gets spellcasting reciprocity out of their hit points. Because that's what blood magic is, right? You're sacrificing some of your soul, some of your lifeblood for arcane power. And I told the designer, who I really, really like, he's the guy who got me into D&D forever ago. He wrote that Revenge of the Pale Master adventure. His name's Chris Rippey. Yeah, Chris did it, yeah. And I was like, dude, do not just make your own shaman. I do not have the word count to pay you for that. Like, we don't have the layout. We don't have the art. You can't make the new shaman. You have this many words. And then he turned in this thing that was like half done. So we made our own version of the shaman. That's the Bloodweaver. And then they've got all their own, like, I think it's called disciplines instead of spells. And it's intense. There's a tome for it. It's actually like a basic class article, an advanced class article, which is how I did that 2 article breakdown for classes. And then the tome, which is like 15 pages. But yeah, I think that was definitely one of my favorites. It's unfair for me to say so because I wrote it, but I really like the Gemini class.
Hey, no, you bring up stuff you wrote, of course. Yeah, talk to me about the Gemini class. What's in there?
The idea is that you're messed up. Like, you are fundamentally flawed in such a way that you have like a. It's not quite like a personality disorder, but there's 2 different sides of you. So whenever you take the class, you pick an archetype, and my favorite I think was the old young. So like every day when you wake up, you roll a d20. If it's even, you're this side of your archetype. If it's an odd, it's your other side of the archetype. And like if you're older, you're getting wisdom bonuses and your intelligence saving throws are better and stuff like that. But if you're younger, you're more physical, and I think there's a speed boost or something. And it is another take on like a BAMF fighter, if you would. More like not quite like teleporting around like Nightcrawler does, but an agile battlefield warrior that I don't feel the fighter quite does well enough. And then the meta cards I thought were really cool too. So that's an idea that came out of one of my groups, where sometimes people don't show up and like we just continue onward. But like, what do you do about their character, right? Does somebody play them? Are they just off in the woods? Like, So meta cards. And it's a small like rule system you use to create these like game boundary bending things. So the player gets the card to represent like, this is the help that this character would give me, and then you can play it if their person's absent. And also, if your character dies, and you don't just like needlessly suicide your character, but like they die because of bad rolls or because of plot or whatever, then you get like a graveyard kind of card. I think it's called a moratorium card that your new character can play once at some point during the campaign for a special bonus. I don't know. I just really conceptually like that, because whenever you lose a character, it kind of hurts, and it sucks when somebody can't show up, and like something that they could have contributed would have made a huge difference.
When you're putting together EN5ider articles, is there ever like a monthly theme or that kind of thing? You know how often periodicals will have that sort of monthly theme. I've seen that go on in EN5ider before. Is that something you're still continuing?
Yeah, I remember James did themes like in the winter we're going to do ice stuff and things like that. I have tried to provide more stuff to coincide with WotC's official scheduled material. So, like, when the Ghosts of Saltmarsh comes out, there will be a small smattering of, like, nautical-themed articles. But for the most part, no, I don't think I've been hitting the themes very hard. It's kind of whatever feels right, and I'm trying to really get that like variety balance. Maybe I'll go back to themes in the future. We'll see.
So how do you get that variety balance? Walk me through the process of picking articles, right? You look at pretty much every pitch.
Well, not every pitch, because I'm pretty specific. If you don't follow the rules listed in the pitch call, that tells me that you're not necessarily the best person to work with. So freelancer tip, if you are given directions, follow the directions, because it's a test. Like we're testing you.
Yes. Oh my God. I agree with that more. Yes, please follow, because odds are you're getting a lot of things. And so if it's easy to weed it out based on like, oh, you're not following this, you're probably going to be difficult to work with. You will.
Yeah. I mean, I did pull one pitch out of the trash bin because I really liked the idea. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can work with this person. It ended up being a good idea. But for the most part, yeah, if you can't follow the directions, Oh, it drives me insane. No matter what font I use or how big it is or what colors, people just don't read them. First happens, all those people who send me pitches that don't follow the rules get cut. Then, like I said, I think it was 100, 150, something like that. I take them all into Google Documents from out of my email thread, because it's one of the rules. You got to keep it in the same email thread. Don't send me a new email. I don't need 150 new emails. So I put it in a Google document, and then I format it all down to like basic text. I make sure it's tagged with the author's name and the title of their pitch, and then like what the pitch is. Then I'll go through and I'll read them once. Then I'll go through and I'll read them again, and I'll score them all as I go. It's like little comments. Then I will rearrange them based on what their scores are. Then I'll go through and I'll read the top ones again, and then I'll probably tweak some of the scores a little bit. And then I'll go through and start tallying up the different kinds of articles I have, because I can't do 10 villain spotlights in 2 months, right? Even if they're all really cool. We're not the villain spotlight Patreon, we're the 5e Patreon that has to cover everything.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that's already been scored gets categorized, and then I that's where I start to pick out the final list. And typically I go 4 months in advance. I'm going to start doing less because Morris likes to tell me to do things late. Because I had to redo the schedule 3 times this last one, and I don't ever want to do that ever again, if only just to avoid emailing people and being like, hey, I'm sorry. Your thing's due a month later, or I need your thing 2 weeks sooner than I told you.
Right, right.
Yeah, and it's scheduled pretty far in advance because of the art scheduling. The art director, he has to be able to have time to do his job. The illustrators need to have time to do their jobs. The layout guy needs time to do his job. Also, it's good if I have time to edit it. And the more time we have it sitting in the hopper, the more likely we are to improve on its development. So, like, if it's there for 2 months, I'll probably come back and tweak the document 4 times. If it's there for 2 weeks, there's just not as much time for me to, like, let it sift around in the back of my head or hash out this or that finer design point with the author.
After you've worked with the author, then everything goes onto
a Trello card, and then like the art director adds his thing, the layout guy gets it. For a couple of months, I was the layout guy, but I'm pretty sure that Eric's back on it 100% now.
Well, and that's that's a huge thing, because art is part of this too. Like, this isn't just, hey, here's a lot of awesome words. There's usually at least one piece of art that goes with every article.
Oh, yeah. The cover image is... so the Zeitgeist stuff is art that EN5ider already owns. And then for the most part, articles use original cover art done by a wide variety of artists. If you are interested in submitting your illustrations to EN5ider, contact Michael McCarthy at ronarscorruption@gmail.com.
Nice. Yes, Michael is your art director. We've actually had him on the show before, too. Hey, everybody, I just wanted to take a quick break to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Elderwood Academy. Elderwood Academy are the makers of many fine artisan, handcrafted gaming accessories that go great for RPGs, board games, card games, dice games, you name it. One of my favorite things that I own 2 of are my spell book boxes. They have these custom inserts that allow you to carry your dice, your pencils, your miniatures, your cards, whatever you need, tokens, all that good stuff, to your next game. So go check it out at elderwoodacademy.com/don't-split. That's elderwoodacademy.com/don't-split. It is really, really a great site. You're going to find something that you love and need to have there. So when you look at variety of stuff, is there anything that you haven't had yet or you want more of that you maybe you've had a little bit of in EN5ider that you're hoping to bring, or something maybe that's coming in the few months that you're like really excited about that you haven't had before?
There's a touch more classes coming, which is pretty dope. So we will. I'm not totally sure on the Kickstarter because the Insider likes to have everything completely done and like ready to ship as soon as payments from the Kickstarter go through. So like we have to proof a touch more class. It's going to be called, and then I collated all the reviews online about a touch up class. So if you are a person who writes reviews for products or is thinking about writing reviews for products, we do read them and we do care about your thoughts. And eventually somebody will sit down and make a 10-page document of bullet points of things that you said about the product and go back and fix it. So there will be a revised A Touch of class to go with A Touch More class. And then I got the proof for the Cardcaster Tarot deck in the mail yesterday. It's dope. And then I'm a world builder, so I would love to do that. But I'm not sure the best way to go about it. So for now, it's probably just going to be more of those intriguing organizations and villain spotlights, because let's go over pretty good. And I don't know. Maybe someday we'll be able to tie that into one larger global narrative, but that's for another day.
Definitely. Well, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because you've designed classes for your world. EN5ider does a lot of class articles, new classes, that sort of thing. I think they're one of the hardest things to design, right? They're one of the hardest things to get right. They're sort of the engine on which an entire character runs. Talk to me about class design. At what point do you decide, like, this really isn't a new subclass, this is really another class? Like where do you make that distinction? What goes down when you're working with a writer to make a new class?
Well, I think there's two fundamental ways you get to here's the new class, right? One is you working on something as an archetype and then get so far into the woods that you're like, I can't see the outside of the forest. Guess what? You're not making an archetype, make a class. Or you can try to break down your huge archetype into like feats and a couple of other things. But if you have enough there, it's probably worth making a class. As for the core concepts, so if you're starting off with like a core concept, say you want to make Lodestar. That was one I really liked. Okay, so the Lodestar is this person who has an intrinsic connection to magic that manifests itself by these stones that just like float around them. And they have full control over them. If you've ever seen the X-Men movies where Magneto makes little metal balls that he flings into people, talking about a Lodestar. So you're like, I could make this as a monk, right? Like monks get what was it, four different traits, or I'm sorry, features, 5, something like that. But like, how intricate can you really make those 5 features? Like, is it going to feel like the archetype is a hammer or like it's a multi-tool? Or both? Do you have the space for that? Is it conceptually like, does the built-in resource of the class, which is in the case of monk is key, have enough resource to support what you're doing in addition to what the class is already supposed to be doing with that resource? It's a matter of complexity and how deep into the rabbit hole you want to go with that concept. If there is enough room in the rabbit hole for like a full concept, which I'm positive about the Lodestar, there definitely is, then there you go. You got a class. Another good example is the Geomancer, which is another one by Gentry, who's the guy who did the Cardcaster. The Geomancer is like a Feng Shui. So like he's an elemental caster. If there's no fire around, he can't cast fire spells. If there's no water around, they can't cast water spells. And yeah, maybe you could do that with a sorcerer or a wizard, but is it gonna feel like they're actually doing this thing, or are they just gonna feel like a sorcerer or wizard with like a special dress on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right there, right? Like there are things about classes that it's like, well, the Geomancer specifically in that case, it's like, why can other sorcerers cast, fire spells when there isn't fire around? It begins to raise some questions. But if you have a concept like that, it makes sense. But then one of the things that I look at and struggle with then is like, okay, now I've got this idea for class. Now I need to put archetypes into that class, right? So how do you, when you're developing different archetypes, be them for a new class or a pre-existing class, what kind of stuff are you looking for there? Because I think sometimes archetypes and classes can be kind of general, like they can fit a lot of different molds, right? So what makes you think like, okay, we're in need of a new archetype here and this is how we're going to go about it?
If I can't get what I want already. That's the first thing, right? So like, I want a dude who's just like, oh, acrobats. I thought were eventually on Unearthed Arcana did an acrobat for I think the rogue, right?
I think so, but
yeah, I did an acrobat monk. But yeah, I wanted to be like run around on walls, and just my whole thing was being nimble and such. And so that's where I started working on Archetype for that, because that's not just being like dexterous is not in itself something worth making a class out of. Maybe if you want to be like super fast and have like super speed and you run really fast and that's your whole thing, that's another monster you're talking about. Although that can be done well with the monk already. What I'm looking for with archetypes is that the thing with archetypes is they're about flavor, right? It is important to create distinctions in design. Like the wild mage definitely feels different from the dragon-blooded sorcerer, and for good reason. But it's got to have really good flavor to merit making an archetype for it. And as long as the flavor is really good, I can normally work with somebody into making the design fit with whatever the main whatever the class's main thrust is. It's weird to make a monk archetype, for instance, that has nothing to do with key. You can, but unless its purpose is to be, I have nothing to do with key, it should have something to do with key, you know? And same thing for sorcerers and sorcery points.
I definitely hear what you're saying, and I think that makes perfect sense, right? When you're looking sort of at a class or at an archetype, it's thinking about what exists, can you make what's already there, and how much do you need to create then to make the thing that you want to make, right? Sort of the flip side of that is like, we have a ton of monsters. There's a ton of monster books, right, for 5th edition that WotC has put out, that other people have put out, and that sort of thing. But I also feel like as a DM, I can never have too many. You know, it's not like that's a thing that's going to necessarily break the game in the sense that I can always scale that up or down, how many of those I need, that sort of thing. And it's always great to have monsters that the players don't expect, right? Because they might be running games on their own. They might have been playing D&D forever. Beholder, no longer has the shock value because they're expecting it to have a disintegration ray and an anti-magic cone and all that kind of stuff. But EN5ider has some great monsters in it. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of monsters that you look for when people are pitching to you.
Let me see. One of the best pitches I got recently was actually for diseases. He wanted to do planner diseases. So, like, if you're traveling and hopping around on the plains, terrible, horrible things can happen to you. And yeah, I mean, like, that's what I'm really looking for when I get a pitch. I want to see like blazing originality, because I can work. I've worked with dyslexic people. You can't turn in copy bad enough that I can't ultimately work with you if your idea is good enough. That's not to say you should be sloppy. Please don't. Please don't. But yeah, like, it's much more important to me that an idea is creative and original and like has a wow factor and is impressive, as opposed to just like, wrote good stuff. That said, it's important to hit your deadlines. That's another thing we watch for. I make notes about people who don't hit their deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
Much better to get like a B- C+ something from somebody on time than to get like an A+ something like a week later. Because like I said, there's all those people in front of me that have to deal with your content after we're done with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, hit your deadlines, be on time. The moment you know you're not going to hit a deadline, let somebody know. Don't be scared to share that information. If you're like, oh no, I can't do this, let them know immediately so that they have a chance to course correct.
Yeah, the sooner the better. But yeah, if it has to be the last minute, then God, just tell us.
Yeah, the more time you can give people to prepare for things, the better. In all things in life, really, not just putting together role-playing game products, but especially in putting together role-playing game products. Mike, then let's talk a little bit about adventures, right? So if people are participating in EN5ider, and if you're at the hero tier, right, that's when you get the adventures, which is $3 an article. I'm a hero tier member. When you are giving people their adventure content, what kind of stuff are you looking for specifically, and what sort of adventures have you all given out in the past? I should mention that there's free samples of stuff too that people can check out on the Patreon.
Oh yeah, there's 7 of them now,
which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great. So we're working through the Zeitgeist stuff, right? And that's going to be a long time. I've vastly increased the size of each one of those supplements. Like, each one is now, I think, on average, 20,000 words.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's like half a novel.
Yeah.
Well, it's a third, but still, it's a lot. And because I want to get through it, right? Like I want to get on to new stuff. So right now, I think we're on part 6. Is that what's coming out this month? We're talking about Adventure 6 Part 3. So after this month, we should be done with Adventure 6 and on to 7, and then it goes up to 13. But we've also started to do mini adventures. So mini adventures are around 2,000 words, much shorter. And my goal with those is to get pitches and ideas that anybody can use. So like not so much mini adventures as supplemental adventures. The first one is called Tiger Eyes, and it's like at some point the PCs get ambushed by some orcs that were like told that the PCs were talking bad, or half orcs that were talking bad about like the PCs were talking bad about their mother. Seek them out and want to beat them up. And, that's weird, right? But, maybe just somebody in the tavern said something nasty. But then weird stuff like that keeps happening, and they eventually find – I'm not going to ruin it. They eventually find who's responsible for it. And it's something that the GM can include at any point for, I think, characters starting at 4th, 5th level up through 8th level, and just return to it a few times whenever the need arises as their campaign progresses. And, so the mini adventures I'm trying to keep those to be – stuff that can easily be dropped into whatever it is your group is already doing.
I love that. And I love, too, that, adventures, I feel like there's always parts of EN5ider adventures that I can go in and pick apart, which is always a really, really great thing. So
yeah, we should, and to mention, like, Zeitgeist didn't start until, like, issue 150 or something, 100? Mm-hmm. So there's still a bunch of adventures from before that are, like, I know I wrote 2 of them. One was in a city that had to do with like I remember the opening was awesome. The characters walk into a tavern and there's this dude just like covered in blood, and he's got like a scroll and he's clearly like a wizard, and there's a bunch of dead and dying people around him. He's like, it's not what it looks like. And he goes from there. And then I remember the River Styx was a really cool one because it was like when you have a TPK, which doesn't happen too often unless I'm on the water. But when you have a TPK, like, what do you do then? Do you start a new party, or, what? And with the River Styx is you take the party, as long as they're between, like, 3rd and 16th level, you can run this adventure for them, and they, like, fight their way out of the underworld and back to being, like, living creatures. And it gets harder if they have to play through it more than once. But, yeah, so there are adventures on there that are not Zeitgeist, but we're not going to be able to get back to new adventure content for a little while, except for the mini adventures.
There's something for everybody, right? There's some great adventures.
Multiple things for everybody.
Definitely. So, whatever you're looking for, you can really find a lot of great quality in EN5ider. Let's talk a little bit about pitching because, we've touched on it. Obviously, you want to follow the format and that sort of thing. How can people, if they want to pitch, get in touch with you, and how do they go about doing that?
Oh, okay. So you can easily find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at Mike Myler 2. You can email me at mike.myler.adventures@gmail.com. You can find all this information on the EN5ider submission page if you just Google EN5ider and submission.
And I'll also link it over at don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com for people.
Yeah, please. I got, I think the list right now is 101 people, but I want more. I want 1,000 people on the list.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. And do you look for people with a lot of experience, or are you still willing to accept young, fresh-faced James and Introcasos who have never written anything for money before?
I do not care who you are or what you look like or where you live or, well, I take that back. If you're like some weird one-armed, like freaking 10-foot tall mutant, I do care about who you are and what you look like and where you live because I want to meet you in person. But if you are anything other than that, email me.
That's awesome. I love that you're working with all kinds of people and you get to work with Mike Myler, who is one of the greats people when you work with EN5ider, which is really cool. And let's talk a little bit about this. The idea that your rights revert back to you. So you write something, EN5ider has it for a year, and then you can do whatever you want with it after that, right?
If you're an illustrator, you actually get the rights back sooner than that, I think. Although I don't deal with art, so I'm not positive on that. Writing is 1 year, and then it's yours to do with whatever you want. I took the first classes that I designed for EN5ider, and I tweaked them to my satisfaction. And they're in the Book of Exalted Darkness and the Book of True Evil. And a lot of the content in the Book of Celestial Heroes actually is also stuff that I got rights back from EN5ider, and I was like, okay, sure. Here's some tailored magic items for your silly, I love divinity, whatever hero guys. I'm still nonplussed about that book. So bad in taste. But yeah, no, it filled up. Whenever I get rights back to something, I set it aside and I'll find a spot for it in an upcoming publication, as long as it fits. I'm not gonna put ridiculous things in Mists of Akuma that don't fit. But
sure. But it's great to it's great when you sit down to work on something and some of your writing's already done and you've been paid for it once already, right?
And normally you can contact the artist and get to use that artwork again if you really want.
Yeah, that's incredible. Is there anything about EN5ider we haven't mentioned that we should mention?
There is that massive number of articles. So if you are looking at the website and you're like, God, so many, click on posts. And on the left-hand side, there's like little buttons. So you can sort the articles. But like, I want to see the 26 articles on magic items. Or what is it? 28 Zeitgeist articles, or 22 playtest articles, or 10 advice articles, or 8 feats articles, or 13 NPCs articles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. Well, people should definitely check it out. Go to patreon.com/EN5ider or don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com, where there will be a direct link in the show notes for you to check out EN5ider as well. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. If people should go to your website too. You mentioned some of your other contact information earlier, but let's talk a little bit about your website. And you mentioned you are a world builder. What can people find there?
Okay. So on MikeMyler.com, you will find, basically, you will not be able to leave without finding something you like. I promise. I use the blog as a space where I can do stuff that I can't sell, right? So there's a whole very long hack for playing Warhammer 40K and D&D 5e, or Star Wars, or superheroes, or what's my favorite? The Muppets one. The really hardcore, like a Gonzo Muppets one is amazing. Not for children. But there's all this free stuff on my blog, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, all that stuff. And then there's my worlds, which are all stuff that I funded on Kickstarter. And I got a stack of like 30 or 40 books that are for Varanthia Codex, which is only Pathfinder. Hypercore 2099, which is like superhero cyberpunk for Pathfinder or 5e. Mists of Akuma, which is probably my favorite. It's Eastern fantasy noir steampunk for 5e or Shadow of the Demon Lord. And then Hypercore Wasteland, which is like sci-fi fantasy apocalyptic punk. And then the Book of Exalted Darkness and the Book of Celestial Heroes, which is about playing evil characters in D&D 5e in a decopunk world.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining me again today on Tabletop Babble. You're a great man.
Oh, thank you again for having me. It was wonderful to be here.
Wow, what a great interview with Mike. People, if you like these interviews, you can support the show financially by heading on over to patreon.com/Introcaso and setting up a monthly donation. As little as $1 gives you the power to help vote on directions this show is taking. Topics we'll cover, things like that, as well as stuff that I'm doing with World Builder blog. For a little bit extra, you can get more content that's more me in your ears and face and eyes if you're doing that kind of thing. And hey, if you don't have the scratch, guess what? Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. There's a way you can support us for free. Head on over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. Even if you're not using iTunes to listen to the podcast, odds are the podcatcher you're using uses the iTunes algorithms to rate and recommend podcasts. So go create a free account, rate us, rate all the podcasts you love. It would mean so much. It helps other people find the show. And if you leave us a 5-star review, I will read it out loud. You can make me say anything you want, like Topher ATL. Topher. I freaking love Topher. He's got to come back. He was a guest on this program before, many time guest when I had him on the round table. Left a review entitled Fun, Exciting, and Informative. It says, "This is my go-to tabletop RPG podcast. James has great guests and weaves a great balance of giving the listeners usable info to take away from their home game and allowing the guests to shine and promote the project they're working on. Rockstar stuff." Thank you so much, Topher. You are a rock star yourself. So go check us out. Be like Topher. Be like Topher, people. You want to be successful. You want to be amazing like Topher. go leave us a 5-star review and your life will fall into place. Not guaranteed. Everybody, I just wanted to give a quick moment to say we've got 2 awesome new podcasts on Don't Split the Podcast Network. We got a show called Redemption, which is a Star Wars actual play podcast, and we've got the limited run D&D Brief, which you are definitely going to want to check out. They're on all the podcatcher apps. You can check them out on our website over at don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com. You're really going to love both of these actual plays. They are... I was a chef kiss in case the audio didn't pick that up. Chef kiss for you all out there. All right, people, you can find me on Twitter at James Introcaso and over at worldbuilderblog.com. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget that RPGs are like sex. Hey everybody, James Introcaso here. I just wanted to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Grimmer Space. Grimmer Space is an incredible Starfinder setting that is on Kickstarter right now. If you want to know about it, you should listen to one of our latest episodes where I talk to Roan and Lou, the creators of the setting, about how it's magic versus technology in Grimmer Space. It's a horror, sci-fi setting you're going to love. It was developed by Sean Astin. Yeah, that's Sean Astin of Lord of the Rings and Stranger Things and Rudy and all that good stuff. It is a really in-depth, awesome space setting. You are going to love it. So go on to Kickstarter, check out Grimmer Space. It's already way, way, way overfunded. You're going to get all the incredible books that they want and so much more. It's a really, really good value. So go right now, Kickstarter, check out Grimmer Space. You're going to love it.